99 nights I've been gone from you. 99 nights down in Santa Cruz. 99 problems, but I'm meant for you. Shit, you know it's true. 99 girls, but they ain't like you. 99 drinks that I couldn't refuse. 99 problems, and my last one might be you. 99 nights.
Welcome back to Yin Young, the podcast. This is episode 53. That number may change based on how I put these all out, but it's around 53. And I'm here with a musician, activist, James Huang. Yay!
Yay!
AKA known as Strike 3, artist Strike 3 on it's the third strike on his Instagram handle. Check out his stuff. He's making good music. His recent single dropped, 99 Nights. It's fire. I like it.
Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, man. So basically, as I mentioned before, James and I had talked recently, and we connected basically. I mean, James, so because both of us are named James, how are we going to, Dan, how should we do this? Am I going to just be Young then, I guess?
You could be Young.
Yeah, just call me Young then for this podcast.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not the youngest, but I'll be Young.
I mean, another way you can also just call me Strike too. That
Strike?
works, too.
Oh yeah, we can call him Strike.
You want to be called Strike? Okay, I'll call you Strike then. I'll be James. So Strike, I know from basically, Strike, do you want to share like how we got connected?
I mean, honestly, I think it was pretty totally online, right? Because I knew your sister, and then your sister told us to follow you on Instagram. I checked out your videos, especially the one about the AMA for your film festival.
Cool.
And then I hit you up on that. I thought it was interesting, and then we went from there.
Yeah, and we connected. My sister does some teaching, and James is, or Strike is one of the students, and so we connected. I listened to his stuff. I thought it was like, it's like he's putting out work and he's being creative, and we started chatting also about Asian identity, and I think that one thing that we really connected on was something that we both are passionate about is having more positive representation in the media, whether it be film, TV, music, or even politics. I think it's really important for us to have, our voices out there, and also to support the movements that we like to support. One movement that we've talked about before is They Can't Burn Us All, which is led by William Ham and China Mac, which we'll talk about. But so I guess one thing I like to start with any new guest is basically, get a little bit about your background, James, Strike, and to see, get to know you a little bit more. Can you share, where you grew up?
Yeah. So I grew up in the Bay Area, obviously, Fremont. And so do you want me to talk about, my upbringing as a child or how it ties into my music?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, whatever you want to talk about, and also just if there's anything that you feel like you can't really touch on or you're not comfortable talking about, just feel free to let us know. We're definitely we'll pivot and switch topics. So we just try to keep it nice and easy. Yeah, whatever you want to talk about. Yeah.
All right. So, I grew up in Fremont, and I think it's a really interesting culture because Fremont is really like this melting pot between Asian culture, the first gen, and also American culture. And I feel like I've always been in the forefront of that because starting from elementary school, I was sent to a private school. And that private school, it was, there was Asians, but there's also a lot of whites, especially going into high school. I'm in a majority white high school now, private Catholic school, Archbishop Mitty. And it's given me a really interesting take, both for my music and from my activism stance, because I feel like every day my friends and I, we confront this. Really, it's like a sliding between two cultures and two worlds. Yeah.
When you say two worlds, you mean American and Asian, or?
Yeah, we're at the forefront of this new Asian American identity and a culture. So that's where I'm at. Because I'm from the Bay, but I also like we also think that we're from more. You know what I'm saying?
For, so when you say like when you claim like a hometown or claim a culture, what do you like you sometimes people ask, oh, where are you from and stuff like that. What do you claim, I guess?
Yeah, Fremont all the way. This is where I grew up. This is where my culture is. And as a kid, I spent a lot of time in San Francisco too with my sister. But like, so I grew up with my grandparents mostly because my parents were out of town. Well, not out of town, but like, always out working. And I was raised by my grandparents and really like the older kids in my after school, and we'd be hanging out and that. And that also gave me a new perspective because like, I mean, more so than other kids because I was more influenced by this in between. I was really influenced by like the older kids and what they made out of the combination of an Asian and American identity. Yeah.
So what do you think is different about the new Asian American identity that you are a part of versus the older generation?
As we're talking about like the Asian American culture, I think since we're raised on like this internet culture, it has benefits and it has its problems. I'm not gonna say it's one way or the other, because it's really like it's nuanced. We grew up with access to, on one hand, all these resources. We could get really our voices heard, just like how I met you, right? I wouldn't have met you without this new culture of internet. But what differentiated it is that we had to like find our own way in the world. In a way, it broke our bubble because we grew up in a society where like everything is mass media. And the fact that we were not represented in mass media put us in this almost in between state where we had to find our own values. Do we define ourselves with the values of our parents or the people we choose to like online? And you guys can talk about, because I'm also curious about how you guys grew up, because again, I wasn't born in that culture, and we can compare there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the Bay Area too, but like a much different time than your generation. I grew up in the infancy of the internet. So I grew up in the 90s. I went to school late 90s, early 2000s, and then so I was in my family, since my sister's 6 years older than me and my brother's 5. I mean, they were they kind of learned a little bit of the tech stuff, but I was usually the one teaching like the parents how to like get connected and troubleshooting stuff. So yeah, like, but then when I went to college and like we had like landlines and high speed internet, I was like, it blew my mind. I was like, whoa, instead of spending an hour for one song, I could download like a whole album in less than like 30 in like 10 minutes. That was amazing to me,
Yeah.
So yeah, so basically that's when I personally got really into music around that time because it was thanks to like stuff like what was it, Napster at the time, and this is way before Spotify. We had these torrent things where we could download movies, and then so I think for me growing up in Milpitas, I was fortunate in that I feel fortunate in growing up in a very it wasn't such a big deal that it wasn't like if you were white or black, then you would be the minority, but I was Asian, so I grew up in an Asian majority community, right?
Yeah.
Especially in my high school. There were white people, black people. It was diverse. A lot of Southeast Asians and Filipinos, Pacific Islanders. So it was good in that sense. So stuff that I would come across with like bullies and stuff was more so like, oh, you're a nerd, or you're weird, or you're emo, something like that, versus like my race,
Yeah.
So I felt fortunate in that. It wasn't until I got to college in UC San Diego where the ratio, it was still a high number of Asians, but the ratio was, there's a lot more white people. And then I came across kind of like dating culture, where it seemed like some of the Asian girls that I was interested in college at the time, they didn't like to date Asian guys, they were into white dudes. So when I came across that, that was a big shock to me, kind of, and I was just like, oh whoa, and that kind of helped trigger maybe a little bit of my identity as an Asian American, something that I became more proud of as the years went on, and um, basically Dan's wife had put on a show at that school, and it was the first Asian American theater festival, and
Yeah.
so that was really, and also I got really into Asian film around that time. So for me, I think just seeing really cool shit coming from Asia, and like also I was like super into anime in high school, Evangelion,
Yeah.
and seeing like really great stuff coming out of Asia. I'm like, well, why in college I got the sense of like, oh, there was this other there's a better culture. I was trying to be an actor in college, and it's hard for me to get roles.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what's going on here? Maybe I'm a bad actor? Yeah, and it's true. I was still developing my craft as an actor at the time, and but I would just see like, but then when there was that Asian American Theater Festival, I heard like there was some grumblings from some of the other actors, some of the some of the other white people in the department saying, "Oh,
They're
there's
getting
no like,
handouts.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
there's no white theater festival, there's no black theater festival, like
I mean,
so yeah,
I think this is what really lies at the key, I think, of what I was talking about earlier. So you said that when you were in college, you touched on this, like, Asian culture, right? Like K-pop and that film and everything coming out of Asia, which is great. Yeah. And
yeah.
my generation, personally, I was raised off like J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar and like, Kanye West, because those were the closest things that we had as like role models, as a minority in America. And I think that that's not a bad thing, because it really shapes like our way of, life too, and like how we look at the world. But I was talking to Will about this. What we quickly realize is that people like China Mac, like people that grew up as Asian Americans with our very specific struggles, we don't have a lot of those kinds of people. We have Asians and we have Americans. But what's lacking for a lot of the representation in my generation is Asian Americans. And that ties also into what I'm trying to do with my music and my movement, which we can talk on later. I'm working on a youth movement right now called Gen AZN with the kids in my area. And we're really trying to, transform
cool.
this media and bring awareness to exactly what you were talking about. I think like what you also was saying about, these Asian girls only dating white dudes, right? It also stems from it hasn't gone away. I just want to emphasize that, because there's this
really?
white worshipping. Yeah, the problem is when you don't have pride in your own culture, or you feel like you have to run away to something else, you worship one while putting the other down. And that's what concerns us the most, the white worshiping in our cultures. And what we aim to do to combat that is not focus on that, yes, we need to fix these things like sexualizing Asian women and, like just treating Asians, men and women alike, like second-class citizens in all ways, from, politics to relationships to representation, entertainment. And that stems from celebrating the diversity in our communities. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very curious that so Dan and I went to high school many years ago, and it's kind of surprising to also hear the same sentiment, 2020, whatever. And yeah, I mean, we can skip around, but one topic that I wanted to touch on was like high school life now in America as an Asian kid growing up in America. So you said you grew up in so your demographic, that area is this high school you go to is mostly white, yeah?
Yeah, 50% about 50%.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other 50's got a mix of like Asian, Hispanic,
Latinos, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even at your school, you do feel a sense that whites on top, Asians are second class citizens, even now.
Not in my school.
Not at your school. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate enough in my school to, I think everyone gets a chance to define themselves in my school. And while we have, obviously there's still racism, you know, because it's very easy to bring diversity as a figurehead, as I was saying in the call with you earlier. But the fact is that when there's cultural imperialism, as one of my teachers likes to put it, there's always going to be instances of racism. And that's not like, you know, picking on microaggressions. That's just like critical race theory and the nature of putting one culture down and bringing the other up. In my school, it's not so bad, but I definitely have seen my friends who grew up in like not so diverse schools suffering the exact same thing that you did 20 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And strike, I mean, with the Asian American identity that right now, do you differentiate between the Asian cultures, or is Asian American just like everything Asian and American? Like, are you all Chinese Americans, Asian Americans, Japanese Americans, all Asian Americans? Or is there some differentiation between the different cultures within the Asian American population?
So I like to think of it as a healthy balance between taking pride in where you come from while also having the awareness that you are something novel. And that novelty is what we share. You know, we're all Asian American, and that's what brings us together. We differentiate, obviously, between like, yeah, Japanese American, Chinese American, Korean American, but that doesn't stop us from unifying and standing up, you know. Like Will said, if a Filipino actor does well, a Filipino American actor, we're going to celebrate that. You know, if a Japanese American gets like into a movie, we celebrate that because we stand up for each other. That's our greater community. Of course, we have smaller ones, but that's what the movement is about, is unifying them. Yeah.
That reminds me, there's a UCSD professor, Espiritu. She wrote this book called the Pan-Asian American Movement. And I don't know if that's the exact title, but she talks about how even across the board, even though we are of different backgrounds, Japanese, Korean, Chinese, Vietnamese, Filipino, all the different Taiwan, all these different Asians. However, we are lumped together in a sense by the American society. Let's just say the a white dominant society in America. We're all lumped together. So in a sense, a lot of experiences that I've talked to other Filipino Americans, Korean Americans, Japanese Americans, which I am not. I'm Taiwanese American. When I talk to them, I do come across, oh damn, you came across that too. Oh, you met a chick that wasn't really into Asian guys too, or you met someone that called you a chink or a gook. That there is that shared experience, and so those are more like, you know, more macro aggressions. But even microaggressions, like, you eat that, that's interesting, you know, stuff, you know, there's like micro stuff, or where are you from, that kind of stuff. So I do think there is a space for all Asians to share, but also like I think I totally agree in saying like you can also celebrate the diversity within that community, like Koreans have some like really awesome, you know, stuff in their culture, Japanese as well. Yeah.
With that, I mean, if you celebrate any Asian Americans getting representation in film and the media, that's great. But what do you have thoughts about when a movie I don't know, this might be before your time, but Memoirs of a Geisha. Memoirs of a Geisha was like this big deal back in the mid 2000s about the Japanese culture, but they casted a bunch of people who were not Japanese, but they were Asian, they were Chinese. I think Zhang Ziyi was probably in it. I don't even remember anymore.
Yeah, Michelle Yeoh.
Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that's okay, or do you think that if there is like a cultural specific type of movie or story that they should actually cast from that culture, or is it just okay for like all Asian Americans, as long as they're Asian American, and it's not whitewashed, that it should be fine. Because
So this is a Japanese American movie or Japanese culture?
Japanese culture movie. It was those Memoirs of a Geisha back in Imperial Japan, where they're talking about the geisha culture, the geisha, and how one girl is like coming up in the ranks. If you
Well, I'm
will.
gonna be honest. I think a lot of my friends and I, we don't really get the chance to differentiate. Like one of my friends says, like Korean, Japanese, or Chinese. Yes, we're different, but if you go outside of our communities, does anybody see you differently? And that's what we need to fix, yeah? And as Asian Americans, we're more similar to each other than, like, I'm more similar to a Japanese American than someone from China. So I don't know if we have the say in that, because Japanese culture is very different from Japanese American culture, from what I see. And I can commentate on like the culture that we share in, which is this Asian American blending.
Uh-huh.
But in terms of that, the Japanese culture, personally, I think it's okay. But I understand why a Japanese person would disagree with that. But again,
Something more recent is probably like Fresh Off the Boat, where Randall Park, he's totally Korean American, but he's playing a Chinese person, and I think he's doing the accent. I don't even remember. I think I watched the pilot ages ago. I couldn't watch it because
he does an accent. Yeah.
That story is pandering towards Middle America of what they perceive as Asians and Asian American experience as first generation and second generation Asian Americans. So
yeah.
I understand that we have so few opportunities in regular media, and that we should definitely celebrate whenever we have those opportunities and they actually do at least cast as much as they can within the Asian American race or Asian American society. But at the same time, there were other people, I would hope, that could have filled that bill of being the Chinese dad within the...
Yeah.
So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I see both sides. This kind of sounds stupid, but both sides things. At the same time, I mean, are we okay with just trying to get the foot in the door? And this is a stepping stone to something further along. And then once everyone understands that Asian Americans have to be represented in the media, and then we go, okay, there are more than just Asian Americans as a block. There is the Chinese American experience, there's the Indian American experience, the Japanese American experience, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, Daniel, I totally agree with you. I know what you're talking about. And honestly, I had the same thoughts to Fresh Off the Boat. I did feel like it was pandering for Middle America. And I can tell you right now, like from ever since, like growing up, what would mean so much more to us than just getting a specific Asian American experience, which is often just catered towards Middle America. What would help us so much more is seeing Asians out of this like bubble, like more in popular media, superhero movies. Like why can't an Asian American be just like right next to all the other Americans? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It shouldn't just be in the Asian American TV show. Like seeing them in a superhero movie or in a detective movie, and not just as side characters who are stereotypically quiet or nerdy, because that's not accurate at the end of the day. There is so much more to Asian American contribution to American society as a whole that it doesn't make sense just to make these pandering shows which focus on a specific kind of bubble.
Right. And I can, as far as like the superhero thing, that's probably because most of the superheroes were created in the 60s and 70s that we're seeing on screen. So that's like a snapshot of American culture back then and how they viewed Chinese people and Asians in general. I mean, that's why we get things like Shang-Chi and whatever, and he looks kind of, the whole background's all messed up, and then you get the Mandarin with the 10 rings. Anyways, tangent there. So yeah, I get that. So
I hope Shang-Chi's good.
Yeah, cross your fingers.
Cross fingers. I think they're in post-production now or something. So yeah.
They should be in post-production.
I think what Strike brings up as a good point, something I've thought about is, let's take a look at 88 Rising, right? 88 Rising is a Asian-focused music label based in LA. But Sean Miyashiro, he's actually from San Jose. He's around my age, and he started doing events in San Jose, and eventually like went into throwing music shows, and then eventually becoming a manager to artists. A lot of their artists, their main artists, are not American at all, even though they rap or sing in English. So we've got Joji, who's Australian Japanese, but he grew up in Japan. And then we have Rich Brian, who's Indonesian, and he's completely Indonesian. He never grew up in America. He came to America when he was like, what, 17, 18 or something? Just a couple years ago, because he's like only 21 now. And he learned English on YouTube. And, you know, that kind of goes back to the idea of growing up with the internet, like how it's crazy that you can just learn everything off the internet now. For better or worse, but in his case, probably for the better. So those are the main lineups. Oh, there's Nikki, who's also Indonesian, and they sing in English. But like, I'm trying to think of Asian, like big breakout Asian American artists on their label, and I'm trying to think. There's Jonathan Park, who's known as Dumbfounded, but he's from an earlier generation. He's more my generation. And he's focusing. He's still putting out music for sure, but I think they're not promoting him. I think for him, he's become more of like a host / entertainer. He's been doing some work for 88 Rising, but as far as being like a headlining music act, or influencer or whatever, it seems it's more focused on the Asian from Asia artists. Like, are you seeing that trend too? Like, it seems that the Asians, they seem to be doing well in American mainstream, like BTS, K-pop, like straight out of Korea. But then Korean Americans, who we got? We got Steven Yeun, and I guess Randall Park, Ken Jeong, but
John Cho, Daniel
Day
Kim.
There's Daniel Day Kim. So Asian American artists, there's some, but I don't think they're as big of an influence as like, dude, like, Joji puts out a music video, it's like 44 million views, or
Definitely.
Like, I mean, are you seeing that kind of bias in America at all? Is that kind of what you're bringing up, this divide, or you think it's a good thing to have Asians from Asia too? I don't know. I'm trying to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I feel you. Definitely. What you were touching on, like Dumbfounded, right? And like people like Dumbfounded and China Mac.
Yeah, China Mac's Chinese American.
Yeah, they're from, again, a previous generation, but they're the closest that we have to these Asian American representation figures. And I do think it's a problem that we don't have enough. That's just how it is, as Will said. And that's really the core of the movement, both for our Asian American movement, for the youth, and also for my music. And what I try to fight for at the end of the day is really having these people to look up to. Because growing up as a kid, I didn't have people to look up to. And I'm speaking for myself and my friends when I say that BTS is cool. Yeah, people listen to a lot of the music, but I don't think they're exactly role models. The vacuum is still there. Like, we can't relate to them.
Yeah. They grew up in Korea, like you didn't grow up in Korea. Yeah. So, go
especially
ahead.
like Asian masculinity, seeing China Mac in person in San Francisco was transforming for us in that way, because that was what we've been searching for and didn't realize that we were missing until then. And that was really a major turning point where we said, hey, we need to start making the youth realize this. And because it's not going to get better, this vacuum left, until we start acting and realizing it,
I think let's talk about this. They Can't Burn Us All and China Mac. So you mentioned Will before. William Ham's an actor, but he's become an activist. He started out doing Asians for Black Lives Matter movement during the George Floyd protests earlier this year. Now he and China Mac, they teamed up, and basically after this old grandma, I believe in her 80s, got burned in Brooklyn. Like they set this old, Cantonese speaking woman on fire.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
It's so fucked up. It's like these two teenagers like lit up the back of her shirt. Luckily, she was able to like put out the fire quickly. She felt the sharp pain. They slapped her first, then they lit her on fire, and then she rushed over and put it out on a light pole. So luckily, she came out of it fairly okay, but still traumatized, right?
Yeah.
And William was talking about at the rally in L.A., which I attended, the right before San Francisco. He mentioned how her family was inspired by the George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement to actually like speak up, because like even for me, like when I've come across some racist stuff in the past few months at myself, have I reported it? I mean, even I'm like, is it that big of a deal? But like, I'm really glad that they like that for sure needs to be reported. That's physical violence, and because they reported that, China Mac got wind of it, and he's like, "What the hell is going on? Why are not people are rioting in the streets for George Floyd being murdered? How come people are not rioting or not like coming out to support this old grandma getting slapped and burned? So when he started doing that movement in the New York, it really picked up steam. People were really connecting to it, and then he came out to he was doing rally. Him and Will were doing rallies in LA, as I said, and then eventually in San Francisco. So yeah, for me personally, seeing like China Mac talking about, basically it's Asian empowerment, but it's not at the expense of other movements. Like he's all for Black Lives Matter. He was out there, rallying for the Black Lives Matter movement. So it's not saying Asians above others. It's more like, look, there's some fucked up shit happening to our community. We need to talk about it. We need to stand up and fight against it.
Yeah.
So I think that's the message that really spoke to me. I had known about him before from like his interview. He did this talk with Jin. It was like one of the most like, I think so Dan, if you don't know China Mac, basically he was in jail for 10 years for shooting at one of Jin's friends in a club. Right, because he was running with some, bad company at the time, a long time ago, and basically he was put in jail. He was in and out of jail before that too. But eventually, when he got out, he's like, I want to make a plan for myself and not go back in. So he comes from a rough background, and what's interesting is that
James, like you said, the Asian American movement, the They Can't Burn Us Out movement, is not about putting Asian culture and Asian peoples above others. It's about Asian Americans being for themselves and for other people. It's for integrating Asian American groups more closely into the popular media and politics, and like just fighting for ourselves and fighting with others. Yeah.
So what I wanted to connect. So that's kind of the background of They Can't Burn Us All. So I'm kind of interested in like, why do you feel like that versus like all the other stuff like Crazy Rich Asians, Fresh Off the Boat, or even Aquafina, or like all these other artists or other things before China Mac? Why do you feel like what makes this particular movement, China Mac as an artist as well, different than maybe some of the Asian and Asian American stuff you saw before?
Well, as an Asian American male, especially, you realize that the They Can't Burn Us All movement, first and foremost, is protecting Asian American communities and also redefining Asian masculinity. At least that's what we're trying to aim for, because too long has it been this nerdy, quiet, oppressed, and submissive stereotype. And the They Can't Burn Us All movement is different in that it's not just catering anymore. I mean, personally, I like Crazy Rich Asians, and I think it definitely has a welcome place in America. It's a great movie, and it shows a great part of a specific kind of Asian. But They Can't Burn Us All is uniting all Asian Americans for a common cause and transforming that, because I feel like COVID revealed the hatred that was there. COVID didn't create more. It gave an outlet for people who previously held these notions. I mean, especially like growing up, here, you can definitely see that like there are stereotypes. You quickly move out of your bubble. You quickly see that people have assumptions about you that it's leading to conflict, you know. That's just the fact, and we have to transform that.
So, have you personally come across like racism yourself? Then you mentioned like stepping outside your bubble, or I mean, Fremont for the most part is pretty diverse area. A lot of, there's a lot of South Asians now also because of the tech, like in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
But yeah, since COVID started, like, or even so pre-COVID and during COVID, like, have you experienced anything personally as far as like racism or anything like that?
Yeah, I have. I mean, we talked about this in the call before, but like sophomore year and before, I've always been aware of it. You know, I've had instances of racism, you know, getting called a chink, getting called a gook, but unfortunately, our first instinct is to think it's not too bad. And the They Can't Burn Us All movement is telling us, yeah, it is that bad, because do you want to handle that kind of world to your kid? You know, it's not that bad, you can put up with it. That's not an excuse to handle a kind of world that hates the kid, your kid for who you are, for who they are, if you raise a kid in that kind of world. And that's like thinking that this isn't going to get better if we don't do anything. And my relatives and my children will grow up in a world as conflicted and confusing as the one that I grew up in, where they're like my friends and I, we didn't have that much to look up to, you know. What happens if someone calls us a chink? I don't know. That was the first reaction when we were back then, before the They Can't Burn Us All movement. And it's all about transforming this world and hoping for better, because we deserve everything now. You know what I'm saying? Equality, freedom from oppression and pain now. Yeah. I was wondering if you want to go back more into music, because I didn't expect to publicize this.
Yeah, let's connect back to your music. So, I mean, I've listened to your songs, and I think you're just talking about chicks, yeah? Who's Pablo? Yeah. Are you Pablo? Yeah. I mean, yeah. You don't have 99 problems, right? But you got 99 nights, yeah. So let's talk about your music, man. So what inspires you? What influences you as an artist, as a musician?
I'm the kind of musician that I always make music for me at the end of the day. So as you notice, like, I write for when the time I'm in. If I'm feeling like I just had, you know, just like an experience you want to share about, which is what 99 Nights is, you know, the kind of music that you play when you're in the car, just winding down with your friends, or like on the beach at nighttime. That's the kind of music I've been gearing towards recently. I have a pop album coming out soon called Colors, which is, it's a surprise, yeah.
Oh yeah.
And okay. I dabbled with a lot of genres because growing up, I listened to a lot of music. You know, I grew up with R&B, hip hop, pop. We would play jazz at dinner time whenever we ate. So being exposed to that gave me this, it gave me inspiration to always try what I wanted to try. And it began obviously with, you know, kind of vile rap, like the the one that you talked about. I'm just talking about chicks, right? And
yeah.
But that was more experimentation. Yeah, recently I've been gearing up a lot more, and that my record label is also, we're working on, you know, really pumping quality music out there. The Grown Up, that album, was all about experimenting. And 99 Nights was just a proof that with my mixing, my production, songwriting, everything, recording all in my bedroom, that we can make something phenomenal. Yeah.
What do your parents think about your musical aspirations?
Yeah, my parents support it.
That's good.
And also, yeah, I've also always been aiming to be self-sufficient. Like, I try to, you know, have a job. I try to invest my earnings in stocks, and also, you know, always leave my avenues out there. Like, I'm not dropping school for my music. I'm still in school. I have plans for UCLA, these things. So that's where it's at.
Wow, you're already investing in stocks?
Yeah.
Damn, okay.
Yeah, that's starting early. I wish I did that too.
Actually, like, I think around your age, I bought like one share of Marvel, and then it went up like a little bit. I'm like, oh my god! And I sold it, and I should have kept that shit, man. Like, because eventually, Marvel got bought by Disney, and then it got whatever. It's okay.
That's tough.
It's like you don't know, you can't connect the dots going forward, right? That's what Steve Jobs says. It's fine. I'm
Yeah.
doing okay with my stocks right now, so I'm happy. Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, quarantine, COVID, all that stuff.
COVID, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So are your parents musical too? I mean, I grew up, I heard no music on the radio until I was in like junior high, and that was like through friends. But are your parents really into music of all kinds as well? Strike?
Yeah, yeah. My mom, I remember when I was a kid, the first time I was aware of like what a concert was when my sister took my mom to a, I think it was a Linkin Park concert.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, my parents always been into music, especially my mom, and that was a big influence. Being exposed to all kinds of music on the radio with the friends that I grew up with. The older kids listen to all kinds of things. Yeah, I've been surrounded by music pretty much a lot of my life.
That's dope, man. What was like your first? When did you want to go from being like appreciating music to like, oh, I want to make it? Like, when was there like a switch for you, or is it gradual? Like, how was that for you?
So there's two answers to that. Like the first time I wanted to try making music versus the first time I genuinely like I believed in myself. That was when I made 99 Nights and all this gearing up. This is when like recently, honestly, COVID and quarantine has given me the time to perfect my craft and give me a lot of confidence in my music. So this is when I really take my music, like it's more than just a hobby. It's got potential. But when I first started making music was actually, this is also where my name comes from. In middle school, I've always been musical. I would always do talent shows. I played rock guitar in 6th grade for my school talent show. And in middle school, we had to make a project, a song for Spanish. So I made a rap with my friends. And yeah, that's where strike 3 comes from too, because my Spanish teacher used to give us strikes. And the joke was that, like, if you annoyed her, and the joke was the third strike would be the rap song. And that's yeah, but she liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, is that where like you got you got a lot of Spanish influence, like Havana, La Bamba.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. That's good that you found a teacher that was like supportive of that. Yeah. Pablo, is that a reference to Kanye West, or?
It's an allusion to it, but it's mostly just from Pablo Escobar from Narcos, the TV show.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And like, what's real to you about? What's that one?
Oh, that was the first. I made that song in one night because I came back from a dance it was just with the girl, right?
Yeah.
And I figured I would make something. Not to be cheesy, but it was just like.
Oh, super cheesy. No, that's good. Yeah, that's dude. Yeah. I think that it really reminds me kind of like, because I made like a small album back when I was 19, a little bit older than you now, but like, yeah, and I think that's great. I think what's really important for me, if I had to go back and say something to a younger self, or even to like a younger person now, would be like, yeah, I think keep creating. And because what's interesting is that these songs, these writings, these films, whatever you do, these videos, they're kind of like really like beautiful time capsules of your life at that time. I was talking to another musician friend of mine. He's like he's younger too. He's about 20, 21, and he was like, basically I was listening to some of his music, like, hey, what's this song about? And he could tell me like, each song, like there's a whole story behind it. So like it was kind of like codes. It was like, even though I as a listener don't understand what that lyric means, whatever, but for him it's really it draws on this personal memory. And even though I don't fully understand it, I feel it. I feel it, or that emotion behind it. So like that's kind of what I get from your song. There is like the kind of a little bit of a longing, a little bit of like in Chinese they say 臭屁, a little bit 臭屁, a little bit, which is kind of like what's it, kind of sarcastic flexing a little bit, which is fun, So I think there's a little bit of that. So I would say like, yeah, you should keep creating it, because what happens is that at every stage of your life, if you're still making some stuff or doing whatever, you can go look back and you're like, it's kind of like a time machine. You can go back, you listen to that song that you made when you were like, you're hurting on a girl or whatever. And so
I think it's pretty obvious that that Pablo and 99 Nights have very different vibes. Like you said, Tofi, yeah.
Yeah.
If you can tell, recently my music's been more, 99 Nights has been a lot about reflecting on like, it's been 99 Nights since, it's obviously more than that, but it was just looking back on before we really started, I really started getting into music, and I got a great team behind me, you know, my label. Yeah. Shout out to everybody. Shout out to Alex, shout out to Ariel, shout out to Jack, yeah.
You want to talk about SIR? Like, yeah. Well, let's what's this label? And you shout them out. Tell our listeners what your label's about.
Yeah, our label's all about, you know, it's this generation, Gen AZN, and just making music that people vibe to, you know, like empowering. We can do it, and we can do it differently, and we can do it right. 99 Nights was a nod to that, because 99 Nights, you know, have passed since we said we're gonna set out on this and we're gonna promote our music. We're gonna, you know, give our time to this and give our energy, like you said, capsules of time. And yeah, SIR, Strike It Rich. It's all about striking it rich, you know, on that grind, being on that grind. Yeah.
Because looking at your website, 3over3.uniweb.com. So it's interesting because you mentioned the Japanese wood blocks, ukiyo-e,
Yeah.
浮世绘, like floating world. That's really interesting. That's a pretty like cool cultural illusion. So can
Yeah.
you explain that a little bit for like so? What are some of the goals that you want to do as an artist, and like how does that connect to like this idea of blending realities, or like this woodblock culture that you mentioned, the Japanese woodblocks? Yeah.
We want to provide a music. So ukiyo-e. I don't speak Japanese, but 浮世绘. It's all about transcending reality, you know, and in a way that's what our music does. We transcend barriers to touch people and move things, you know. And that's what it's like, this escaping, almost our music is like escaping reality to get like, it's the moment you're on the beach side, or the moment like you're in a car ride with friends and just like spending your time doing nothing and having a good time. That's what we want people to relate over. And of course we also branch out into like activism through art and things like that. But yeah, that's why the illusion's pretty spot on. I think it summarizes our music pretty well.
That's dope, man.
Yeah.
Dan, did you have any thoughts, or?
Where do you get most of your inspirations for your songs?
My inspirations for my songs come from, like I said before, my life. Just obviously at the moment, I'm still pretty young. It's just from my experiences that what I have to say, good and bad, fun and struggle, all into this music. Yeah.
Are you looking to add like kind of like what we were talking about earlier in the podcast? Are you looking to maybe add a little bit of maybe ethnic identity or ethnic awakening into your music, or do you prefer, or you'll see where it goes, or do you prefer to talk about whatever's in your life, like, you know, girls, you know, or I'm curious to see, like, are you looking to blend some of that as well?
Yeah, it all comes naturally. That's the best way to put it. And to be honest, the ethnic awakening, I feel like it both transcends and does not transcend my art at the same time, because it influences how I look at the world, and it influences how I look at my music and how I look at my experiences in life. But at the same time, my music is also very relatable to people, not just Asian American descent, but Bay Area culture, you know, American culture. I think most English-speaking kids of my generation can relate to that, you know, 99 Nights Out, trying this new thing that you don't know is going to work or not, but you're out there, and that's what counts to you. And having fun, you know, little things like girls, not little things like girls, little things like relationships, all the way to big things like where are we going to go? Why are we, you know, what are we here for? It's all the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I think you're our youngest podcast guest. So I think it's kind of inspiring to hear how aware you are as far as like the world, the state of the world, also how aware you are of race relations. I think it took me a little bit longer to really like kind of see that, why is there this stratification in America? Where does that come from? I think that's what's great about the time that we live in now, is that there is more uh, exchange of information at a faster rate because of like the internet, Instagram, TikTok, all that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I do wonder if like, I wonder if we're also being a little bit more alienated too. Like especially now with COVID, I think there's a lot of loneliness too that's happening. Especially we have more ways to connect now than ever, like with Skype now and Zoom. But at the same time, I wonder if like, do you, as far as your generation, do you feel like you're more connected to the people around you, or do you feel a little more disconnected, or I guess it's hard for you to compare, right? I guess maybe you have an older sister, right? Like, are you seeing any sort of like gap between how you interact with people and how you see older people interact with people? Yeah.
Pretty much every musician or artist I know of my age has quit social media for a certain amount of time. They'll drop Instagram for like 2 weeks to a month, or 3 months, or 4 months, depending on all about what they need. Because I think you bring up a good point, because we are very connected, and I definitely have more opportunity than my sister did. But at the same time, we also have a lot more distractions. You know, we can spend we're one click away from making the right connection with the musician, the producer, the promoter, the DJ that we got to know. But we're also one click away from like toxicity, false goals, lies. You know, this culture that glorifies some things that like shouldn't be glorified.
Like for your mental state, like what do you do personally?
Personally, I was lucky enough because I grew up with kids older than me, and this is the difference between a lot of the kids of my generation. I think a lot of struggles also within families is that you look to your parents for help with like life in general, like naturally. But the fact is that a lot of parents don't know how to help with the social media and how to do it like at a healthy amount. But being raised sort of honestly by older kids for until elementary school gave me a different perspective on social media and even like race relations, you know, getting to be people around people older than me, like you guys, obviously a little bit older than that, but it just having that was helpful because guiding you through social media, it's a lot harder than I think we like to admit.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for me personally, sometimes I'll catch myself like lost on it for like, oh shoot, 30 minutes have already passed, an hour has already passed, and I'm like, do I feel better about myself? Did I really gain anything? Maybe a little bit. Some of it was entertaining, but yeah, sometimes I do feel a little empty after like a long social media setting. But yeah, Dan, do you have anything to add to that? Because you've got kids that are even younger than Strike here, so like, is that something you worry about too?
I mean, yeah, in the future, social media, managing that aspect of it is going to be tough, but we'll see. I mean, things might, in the next 4 or 5 years, things might swing to a different state, progress away from Facebook, and more towards something else. Who knows? That's hard to say. But I was curious, Strike, I mean, for me, I've talked to James about this before, but growing up, there weren't that many people that I would look up to that were Chinese or Chinese American, and it wasn't until like watching Kung Fu and Bruce Lee movies and Jet Li movies and all those things that I was like, oh, Kung Fu is like the cool thing from China. Is there something that in your generation that you can think of that you guys look towards?
That's yeah.
Would it be China Mac, or would it be somebody else that you go, oh, you know what? That's actually really damn cool that they're Asian American, so am I. That's something that I can hold up as something that I can point to other people from other cultures and say, that's what we got.
Yeah, we do that. We're one click away from a lot of that. Yeah, because personally, I always had like what I looked up to were really figures like J. Cole, Kanye West, and songs like there's a really good song, "A Letter to My Younger Self," and that song's all about like growing up in this era. I think more than anything, I looked up to music, and my role models were found in music ever since I was a kid. Yeah.
Is there a certain song that goes, you know what? That's like your go-to song. Every time I feel like a little inspired or down, I was like, I listen to that song and I'm like ready to go.
Yeah, totally. Like No Role Models by J. Cole and A Letter to My Younger Self by Quinn. Also Power by Kanye West. Power by Kanye West is all about this also goes back to They Can't Burn Us All. It's about like, well, at least my interpretation of it is taking power. Like it doesn't matter if you're in a culture that despises you sometimes and tries to break you down, because there's beauty in the struggle, and there's also sometimes ugliness in the success. And that kind of awareness really gave me something to look up to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Kanye West, he really epitomizes like there is some ugliness to the fame, it seems.
I mean, he's crazy now, yeah.
Yeah. Did you hear he was on Joe Rogan not too long ago, and I think I get an idea of where he's coming from. I think he does have some bipolar tendencies, but he's also really smart.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's another discussion. But yeah. So yeah, we're coming up to about an hour now. Yeah, anything else you want to talk about before maybe we start heading towards the last section? Yeah.
The last section. Let me see.
We'll probably do like a language corner at the end. Maybe I'll have to think of something, but like a certain phrase from like Chinese or whatever language that you speak, Spanish, whatever that you want to share. But before we get to language corner, here, let me take a look at my notes here. But yeah, I think basically we covered a lot already about. I think one thing I'm kind of curious about your music is that as far as it seems that you are progressing, it sounds like you're looking for your artistic expression to expand across music, activism. Are you looking to do more video too, film, stuff like that, or what's next for you for Strike?
Yeah, what's next for Strike and also Striker Rich Records as a whole? It's branching out. Like you said, activism isn't just a one-way street, like activism also influences us to make better music, I think, because activism at the end of the day is empowering us, and it's inspiring. It makes you make better music, in my opinion. Fighting for something makes you more aware of the world, and it makes you better able to express what you want to say to it. So yeah, Strike 3 and Striker Rich Records, the music coming from us is going to be broader, deeper, but also more enjoyable.
What kind of sound are you looking for? Because it's you coming from like the for growing up, that was a little bit more I would say kind of like rap with like talking about sex, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sorry if you're Mr. and Mrs. Huang. Sorry to out your son now, but like yeah.
What we're aiming towards is more. Yeah, I think it's catering the spirit of like this generation. The ups and downs of growing up here and like having fun, having a light heart, but having like being heavy too at the same time.
Because you play all the guitar, you do all the instruments on these tracks, or do you have a crew that works with you?
Most of the songs, it's all recorded by me and written by me. Yeah, but
that's dope, man.
The new album, we got some guitar solos and features. So
nice, yeah. No, that's impressive, man. Especially at while you're balancing school and life as a teenager. I think that's really impressive what you're doing. But yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Dan, any last questions?
No.
Cool. One last question. I would probably like how's And I think this is a broader question of like U.S. American society at large is like, how's high school been for you pre and post COVID? I know pre COVID, like, dude, there were still like some scares about like mass shootings and stuff like that. Now that we're in post COVID, there hasn't been a mass shooting, thank goodness. But there's other things like I don't know, like yeah, Zoom calls, alienation. I don't know if is there still cyberbullying that you've come across as a high schooler? I mean, that's any age, but
Yeah.
like yeah,
I
I'm
gotta
kind of
say,
yeah.
from the less commute time to more time to spend on my craft and with people that yeah, good company. I mean, over like we can still communicate. I like to think that for me and my friends, it's been pretty good.
Oh,
Quarantine.
good.
Yeah.
So you were able to pivot and use this kind of paradigm shift, whatever the new normal, whatever they call it,
Yeah.
and kind of like, I guess there's a term. I guess this could be my language corner. It's like to thrive in calamity. I gotta look it up. But
Yeah,
like,
because quarantine shows you how to do things. You can do things without things being how they are. Like from the They Can't Burn Us All movement to the new direction that our label is taking in, incorporating more people from our label too, and get into things like like you said, quarantine is thriving in calamity. One of the people that I follow, he's the old president of Music Production Club in our school. I'm the president now, but he posted this saying, "You want to be the guy that sets up, the music festival, that makes the song, that makes the hit song, that puts these things out that people had no idea could come out during quarantine." That's the kind of spirit that we've been drawing on. Yeah.
and this label is like, is this something that you pulled together yourself, or you had sounds like your friend that was the former president of the music production
I pulled
club.
it together myself, but I couldn't do it without the talented artists and videographers at the label. Yeah, the label's mostly kids my age, junior year. We're all the same age. We all know each other. And the music videos we have planned, the covers for my songs, I couldn't do it without them, Yeah, they're talented. They're talented artists, photographers. Yeah.
Cool, man. I'm really excited to see what you all come up with. I think that it's really refreshing to see what each generation is putting out there. I even at my age, I still want to be creative and I have things that I want to say, but it's always great to see how people at different stages of their life, at different ages, what they're saying, and it really inspires me as a personally as an artist too. So, hey
Yeah,
man,
man.
keep it up. Yeah.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah. So Dan, anything else?
I don't think so. Not at this time.
Okay, so yeah, we'll go to language corner. Yay! So Strike. I'm gonna share. If you have anything, I don't know. Do you speak Mandarin or what languages do you speak? Just English?
I speak Mandarin, Chinese, and French and English.
Oh, you speak some French?
Yeah.
Oh,
A bit
nice.
of
Where'd you
Russian
learn?
too.
Oh,
Where'd you
Just
learn that?
A French from school and Russian because I grew up with Russian American friends.
Oh, for real?
yeah.
So, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, so one phrase I may have shared it before is 生于忧患，死于安乐. So 生于忧患 basically means to thrive in calamity, or 生于means to like thrive. 忧患means like bad stuff, like calamity, and 死于安乐. 死于安乐 means like to like die in comfort or perish in soft living. I just looked this up too, just to remind myself. But like from yabla.com. But anyways, this is a phrase that I felt feels really speaks to kind of like how I think what I've been doing now during the quarantine is I've been trying different diets. I have psoriasis, which is a skin autoimmune disease, and I've been trying different diets, and also I've tried some fasting here and there, doing like short-term fasting to see how my body responds. And it's been really interesting to see, like, now I have a lot more confidence in like what I put like in controlling. I feel like I have more control of what I want to put into my body and how I also exercise my body. I've actually got, I think, pretty much more fit during the quarantine. I know some people have put on the quarantine pounds. That's what they call it. But I've actually found some, ways to be, productive. I should be. I feel like I should be writing more, but at the same time, I'm discovering other ways of being, of other things about myself that I find interesting during the quarantine. So that's why I like this phrase 生与忧患失与安乐. The other part is like something that David Cho mentions is like comfort kills, right? I think if a person's too comfortable and just too relaxed in their settings, that's fine. I think there's a place for that. But if someone wants to continue to create, I think it's important to like kind of like look to see, to really like kind of like when Buddha came from a very comfortable living background. He came from a rich family. And then when he jumped the gate and he's like, damn, hella people are suffering, he realized, hey man, there's suffering in this world. I want to help solve it. And I think something about that, for me at least, that's how I kind of interpret that second part. If I've already used this phrase before, I have one more. Hold on. What is it? Oh, 量子纠缠. Has anyone heard this before?
No.
Yeah.
No.
量子纠缠. So it means quantum entanglement. So it's kind of like there's this quantum physics theory where, like, let's say something, no matter how far two particles are, if something affects a particle, like it spins it one way, millions of miles away, another particle will spin the same way. So basically you can call these particles quantum entangled. So I saw this on a YouTube video when this guy was asking these twins like the same question, and they were answering the same answer. Like, oh, what kind of horoscope do you like? Oh, what, Leo? What? And you like Leo? Yeah. So, but it's an interesting theory. I just like, damn, Chinese has a word for that too. Anyways, that's my long-winded. Anyways, entanglement's kind of cool because it does talk about how like, maybe how things are connected even though they could be so far apart. It's a really interesting idea. Yeah. Anyways, Dan or Strike, do you have anything you want to add on cultural additions?
I like the first quote you said a lot. Yeah, comfort kills. That's what that's pretty much what my parents tell me too, and that's why every day I try to do something that makes me uncomfortable. Like even like this, getting out to my first podcast is getting out of my comfort zone, and I think there's something to be said in the fact that quarantine has kicked my butt to really stop making excuses for myself. Like I've been working out every day. I've been lifting. I've been doing I built a pull-up bar. Really, and building that, just working out also makes me realize that like how much self-respect we don't give to ourselves. And that's what working out is really like makes me like, yeah, a lot of self-respect, and it's that.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. How many pull-ups can you do?
I've been good pull-ups. I say like about 20, 30. But I'm saying like good, slow. Yeah.
What? 20? You can do 20 good pull-ups?
Yes, sir. Me and my friend Brian been working out every single day quarantine. Every single day.
Hey. Okay. That deserves a slow clap.
Yes.
That's slow clap.
My cousin probably does more of those.
What?
Yeah.
How many does...
Big dude.
I want to see the four, because like, dude, doing like really strict nice pull-ups, it's tough for anyone. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Your lats, man.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you doing push-ups and like you're not skipping leg day, are you?
Well, like as a track kid, you can't really skip leg day.
Yeah, you can't skip leg day. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's dope, man. How many push-ups can you do right now? Or
I've been trying to do the 100 push-ups a day challenge, but the problem is that but the problem is that it hurts your gains. If you do it every day, you can't do it consistently. 100 push-ups a day, really good form. So I try to do it every other day now. Yeah.
Interesting. Dan, what do you think about that?
Do you do 100? I'm curious about that one. Do you do 100 straight, or do you do like a set of 50 and then another set of 50?
You break it up into 20s or 50s, and 20s you can do chest push-ups, you can do shoulder tap push-ups. You switch each type of push-ups, so you target every upper body muscle, but you can also just do 50-50 normal push-ups.
Okay. I was curious about that.
Because Dan, you do the diamond thing, right? Where you
I do
diamond, then you go wider, then you go wider. Yeah.
The 21/7. I don't do that as often as I used to. I mean, when I was in college, I used to do that every day, but I don't do that anymore.
Can you explain to our listeners or viewers what 21-7
Yeah,
is?
21-7 is you do a set of 21, and I do wide push-ups, and then I move my hands to like a regular standard size or standard width push-ups, and you do 20 of those, and then the next one would be 19 of the diamond, which is like the in close ones. So your index finger and your thumb are touching. Yeah.
Yeah.
You must have a big chest then. Yeah, that's
I-
cool. I'm gonna try that.
No, I don't. That's the thing. I used to do this. I used to do sit-ups and push-ups all the freaking time, and I couldn't gain weight, and I didn't like get ripped or like. It's just my body type. I don't know. And also my diet was garbage. In college, my college diet was garbage.
You gotta, maybe give you can try some of these diets out. Maybe keto or vegan or I don't know.
I mean, if I do that, that means my whole family has to do it, and I doubt my whole family would do it.
They might. You might be. You maybe.
I know my
take
kids.
one. Yeah.
My
You know
kids
your
are not
kids.
gonna do it. There's no way.
I mean,
How old are
Dan.
your
did you-
kids?
They
yeah,
are
yeah.
5 and 7, almost 8 and 6.
Oh yeah, you probably couldn't convince them to do keto.
No way.
Yeah.
They love their cookies, right? Yeah. And one thing is like for all the diet stuff, remember everyone listen to your body because each person reacts differently to each kind of like food. You know, that's something I saw like in the TED Talk, and I believe that. I think I know it's like some people they get, like you said, Dan. Some people they just don't get. They'll eat whatever, but they still, it might be their body type or whatever, but people react differently. Like some people, they eat like one cookie and they'll like
Yeah.
get bloated or whatever. Yeah. Dan, any last cultural things? Did we pronounce that right? The Yukio? Is that how you pronounce it? Dan speaks Japanese.
Yeah, I was looking at that. I wasn't quite sure. That's not something that comes up in regular conversations with my mom.
Yeah.
So it's not one of those things that I can verify.
The idea is there.
Yeah.
The pronunciation might be wrong, but the idea is there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yukio-e. Yeah.
I think it's ukiyo, right? Because it's
Ukiyo-e. Ukiyo-e. Yeah. I'm trying to learn some Japanese myself too. Yeah. Dan,
That's cool.
Dan, any Japanese knowledge you want to drop on us, or any other language?
Zangyo. Zangyo means overtime. The Japanese culture, they work really hard, so there's lots of overtime.
Zangyo. Okay.
Zangyo.
Can you use that for like? I'm just looking at your background. Can you use that for like playoff games too? Like they're in overtime.
No, I mean, Japanese is, you know how like in English we say president for the president of the company and president of the United States? Two different words. One is shacho, is the CEO of a company or the president of the company, and daitorio is the one president of the United States or president of a country.
I mean, in a way, it makes sense. Like, it's two completely different positions, but I guess you have to memorize more words, though.
Yeah. So.
Oh, hey, Strike, do you know any Russian stuff? I'm kind of curious to hear what your Russian friends taught you.
Oh yeah. A lot of slang. Any Russian listeners right now? Я не понимаю немного. По-русски нехорошо.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That sounds like your pronunciation is really good.
It's all right. You can ask my friend Bernie about that.
Can you share what you said, or is that like a secret for our Russian listeners?
I just said my Russian's not bad. I understand a little bit, you know. Not enough to say idioms. Mostly like slang and stuff.
What did you just say, or is that a secret?
It's not a secret. I just said Russian's not that good yet. Yeah.
还好，讲得很好. Yeah. So, давай. I think that davai means like good or something in Russian. But all right, Strike. Let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you for speaking with us. I can't wait to see what you come out with. And check out Strike 3over3.ueniweb.com. You can check out his label there. You can also check out his Instagram at it's the third strike
Yes,
on
sir.
Instagram. Check out he's got a single out now called 99 Nights. If it's cool with you, I'm gonna play it. I'll edit it into the end of the song, this podcast. Is that cool?
Yeah, it's cool.
Cool. All right. Thank you, listeners. We'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks for having me. Thank you. Peace.
Bye.
Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you.
99 nights, never ask for no forgiveness. 99 nights, like I'm stuck in intermission. 99 nights, 99 nights. Bitch, I need a break, so I'm starting that ignition. Down in Corey Lake, then we cruising up to Mission. Turning the other way, hurts the donuts worth a visit. I move around the country like I'm preaching my religion.
Amen.